Hey guys, welcome back to another Patreon video. In today's episode, we are going to go over the Android deck that I've been playing, which is Android 17, and of course, when they awaken, 18 joins the fun. I made a video prior to where I spoke about the deck that I would have taken to Nats, which was Androids, and unfortunately, I didn't get the finished version to you guys because I'm actually waiting for a couple of cards to come in mail, and the holidays came in, so that kind of slowed everything down, but anyways, this is going to be the finalized version. There's a proxy in the deck, which I will talk about it, and you'll be able to see it. And I'll also showcase part of the sideboard. The sideboard is still changing, so, I do a lot of testing. So when you test often, you realize that the quantities and certain matchups, you prefer to play certain cards over others, which is something common. Decks are always going to change. My decks are always constantly improving or changing based on what other individuals are playing. But anyways, we're playing, of course, the Android 17 leader. We'll keep her awakened. For the deck profile, we start off by running 3 Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. He is our single awakening piece. A lot of the times during gameplay, your opponent will leave you stuck at 7 life or stuck at 5 life. Those are the 2 amounts of life you don't want to be at, and of course you don't want to be anything less than like 2 life. But 5 and 7 is a sucky situation because when you're at 7, you're still not awakened, you'll still be on this side, and then when you're at 5, you are awakened, but you don't have access to your 10Ks, and you don't have access to your androids being a 15K. In this case, a 15K here, so your leader is still 10K, and then your actual android pieces, instead of them being 5K stronger, they're just the regular stats they are. So that's that. So he's there for that, and his second ability kind of puts him over the edge as to why I play him over, let's say, the Crit Gohan. Crit Gohan provides you critical and pressure, which is very good. The problem is that it doesn't do anything and it dies afterwards. This card, actually, I can play it on board, and if I know my opponent is going to meet the requirements of his second ability, which is if my opponent at any moment in the game puts in play a 15K or less, outside of actually playing it, if they put it due to an effect, non-keyword effect, they have to ditch 2 cards out of their hand. But it has to be a battle card 15K or less, which is usually like Freehan or little baby cards that people like to put in play for free, especially with like the new Child's Wish mechanic coming around. A lot of people are playing Shenron and they're just hitting Child's Wish to hit a lot of their 15Ks or less. So basically, Child's Wish, this card is a hard counter to that card because they can only bring a 15K or less out on the board, which works with him. And there's a lot of Frieza decks that are also playing like Golden Frieza. Golden Frieza puts in play a lot of guys for low cost. So he's also triggers off the ability and they'll go minus. Let's just say that. The next card we're going to go over is going to be our support package. And we're going to get to the reason why it's support. This is our second awakening piece. Tien. And this is our sideboard. But Tien, a lot of you guys know that this was the card many players used to run before, but a lot of individuals used to say, oh, this card kind of sucks. And even I was in that category at one point in time where I was like, damn, it's not that effective because other decks were self-awakening. The primary decks that were dominating during those formats were Vegeta and Ginyu, and it was because they can just self-awaken, so they didn't have to run cards to awaken themselves. But the reason why he's played in this deck and why I love him is because you're guaranteed to go from 8 to 4 if you want, or you're guaranteed to go from whatever number you are to be able to awaken. So usually it's going to be either from 8 to 4 or 8 to 6, or in perspective, you'll be going from 7 to 5, which is great. This deck, since you have ways to awaken and put yourself down to an even 4 life, you can just use his ability once and be safe. But what's really crucial about this card is that he's one of the earliest kill cards in the game. On turn 2, I can kill anything. He can kill any battle card, providing they don't have like Barrier, Indestructible, or anything like that, which makes him a really, really good card. And always remember, in certain crucial moments, he is a double 10K. And what I mean by that is players actually forget that you can guard with them twice in the same turn, put it that way. Give me an example. I have 4 energy open. I can use his ability, combo from my hand, pay the 2 energy, Now he comes into play. So I guarded one attack. My opponent attacks me again. I can pay 2 more energy and guard from him on the board because he comes into play active mode, which is something that most decks don't do. But just keep in mind you can do really nice plays with him and kind of make him a little bit more useful than what he would normally be. Moving forward, we run 2 Kami's Power Piccolo. Now, this card, I've been testing with it in different quantities. 2 has been the best mix because certain matchups he's not that useful, but having him main board is better than you not having him at all. He is the best removal card in the game. He's constant removal that has barrier and has double strike, which he's also a double strike. A lot of players may forget that, you know, most decks lack double strike and they have to run Champas or Kais to give themselves that. He is just a natural double strike attacker. And all it costs is having Bond 2. So you just have any other battle card on board and you can use his ability, which is extremely useful. Moving forward, we run 4 Shocking Death Balls. This is our second way to awaken safely. So similar to our Mass Saiyan, we have this. If we have 5 cards or less, 5 cards or more in the discard pile, you can, if you have 5 life, you can just use it for free and go to 4. That's very useful when your opponent does try to keep you stuck in the game. So just always remember that this is a way to kind of mitigate that situation outside of these. And not only that, but it's a negate that also kills your opponent's cards. When you use the ability, you can kill one of your opponent's 2 drops or less, which in this case is very strong because one of the worst matchups you can encounter is Storm. And Storm is pretty much like the worst matchup for most decks outside of Hercule. And it's because your opponent can pressure you an immense amount. This card just kills their pressure off or reduces it. The next card that I run is one of my own favorites, and this is a card where you have to practice a lot because if you don't practice a lot, you're not going to be able to play the deck effectively, and that's King Vegeta Surprise Attack. This card is one of my favorite cards to use. I'm running 4 guys. It's a great card, but it requires you to have a good understanding of what you're doing in gameplay to maximize the value. Because this card can be dead if you are not using it properly. But outside of that, you guys already should know what it does. It just gives you a nice 10k plus revenge. It's useful for the Android package, which I'm going to go over, and any blockers you may have in the main board / sideboard. It's very good when you need to get rid of a threat, and you can just set your opponent up for it. Moving forward, we run our 4 super combos. We're actually going with the Android 16 route. This card is very strong and is super effective in many situations. Instead of plussing you 1 in hand, you actually have your opponent discard a card, which is extremely strong against Storm when they're trying to shotgun you for game. If you ever saw people hold on to like a Bad Ring, a Mira, and whatever, that's basically this card just shuts down their combo, and it also helps you just not get screwed over of getting, you know, gamed right away. So having multiple copies of this could be very strong when you're playing against that matchup, and overall it's just a good card to kind of reduce your opponent's play options, which is why I run that over other super combos. Moving forward, we run 4 Android 18s. She's one of my favorite cards, has always been since the release of her. She's a crit droid. Her best ability is that you could pay 1 green, and if your opponent ever discarded a card due to one of your effects, which Piccolo, this guy right here, you can set your opponent up. I can kill a 4 or greater on your board, and it'll go back, and I can use her effect and trigger her. She can kill a 3 or less with her ability. So you pay 1 green, and you can kill a 3 or less from your opponent's board, which is extremely powerful because you can basically board wipe if you play correctly. You can take out multiple battle cards on your opponent's side of on the field and give you a bigger, greater edge in gameplay. Moving forward, we run 4 Deadly Defenders. I notice a lot of deck lists haven't been running 4 of her. She's just amazing, and amazing in the sense that if you're at 4 or less life, she's a 25k beater on your turn, and she still has barrier. And then on your opponent's turn, she becomes a 20k. She becomes the stats that she is originally. And it's very strong when you combine her with King Vegeta Surprise Attack, or any cards like Senzu Bean if you run a blue variant. Moving forward, we run 4 17s. 17 is similar to the 18. His ability is just a little bit different. If you can KO a 3 or less from your opponent's hand or board, his effect can trigger for 1 green. You can play an 18, 2 or less from your hand. 3 or less, sorry. 3 or less from your hand. And what that does is it allows you to play either her or her, which is extremely strong because you can set your opponent up for cheaper droids. So you can bring out your androids basically one for just 1 energy, which is extremely strong. Moving forward, you run 4 Limitless Energy Android 17, which is very strong in this deck because in androids, you're constantly reducing the cost by 1. So in this case, Android 17 becomes a 3-drop that is essentially a 25k blocker with barrier, and when he comes into play, he kills a card. Again, you're at 4 less life, your androids are ridiculous. Moving on to the cell package, we run 4. This is pretty standard. It's essential to run 4 of the main cards that get the deck going. We run 4 of him, whole point of getting into the cell chain, and then we run 4 of the finisher. Again, we're running 4 copies of everything because if it ever gets caught in life or ever gets caught in your hand, you can still have multiple copies in deck where you can at least cell chain on average 2 to 3 times in a game on average. That's what you're able to do with this deck, which is great. And some games, obviously, you might be a little unlucky where you can only cell chain once, and there are going to be those games where you can cell chain 4 times. It has happened, but it's very rare. And when it does happen, you're just doing it for like overkill purposes. But anyways, the last card in the deck that we run is a proxy, and that is a 5-drop cell. The cell that is from the ultimate box. His ability is when he's put into play, you draw 2 cards and you can put in play 2 tokens. The tokens are 10k and they're also 5k combo pieces, similar to Goku Black, aka Shadow Clone Jutsu. So that's the main board. The main board of this deck is, the whole goal is to control your opponent, put them in bad scenarios so that you can just, take advantage of them when you're ahead of them in the game state. That's what the deck does. It kind of puts you always ahead of your opponent. Your opponent can't keep many cards in hand because they're playing against Cell Chain. So a lot of people don't know how to play correctly on it, and they start playing weird. They start over comboing, they start guarding up too early to keep a low hand size. And this deck doesn't care if you keep a low hand size or not. If you do keep a low hand size, I primarily use the androids to finish you off. If you keep a high hand size, I'm gonna cell chain you and put you in a really bad spot because you decided to keep maximum resources, and now I'm gonna get rid of majority of them. So that's the way you play the deck. Now we're gonna go over the sideboard. Just wait 1 second and we'll be right back. All right guys, so now we're back and I will be going through the sideboard. Now the sideboard is not fully complete and you can switch up the variables based on your likings. Again, sideboards are primarily made for the format that you're expecting to encounter. So my encounters and the decks that are weak, or put it this way, my deck that's weak against, those are going to be the decks that I sideboard primarily for. And of course, it's based on your format. So whatever works in your format, in your area, that's what you're going to use your sideboard for. So going to it, I'm sideboarding 3 Haru-Harus. Don't mind the extra plastic, but there's going to be 3 in the sideboard, which is primarily for the mirror match, so any cell chain based deck that's green, and of course against certain yellow matchups that you will encounter. Golden Frieza, the new Shenron Frieza, and cards of alike. We sideboard minus Killzone. I have 3 copies right now currently, but I may move it to 2. This card is a very interesting card. If you have 3 or more cards in your discard pile, you can warp 3 of them, and what that does is you draw 1 card, and for that whole turn your opponent cannot activate counterplay cards. So that means no Cold Bloodlust, that means no Crusher Ball, nothing to really interact with your cell chain. That's the whole purpose. There are going to be yellow decks that are going to hard counter you all the time, and they're going to just mull for their Cold Bloodlust. That can be annoying because that means that you won't be able to cell chain them. And in certain matchups, if they get ahead of you and they have a huge hand, it's going to be very difficult to win that match because androids don't generate much of a hand. That's something that I do want to tell you guys. Androids are kind of like mid-range when it comes to hand. So they never will have a huge hand unless the game is very awkward and it's not progressing correctly. That's the few times they will have a huge hand. 4 speedy surprise attacks. This is primarily for the matchup when you play against Storm. Storm, again, is our worst matchup and mostly most decks' worst matchup. It's to slow down the game and guarantee a kill off on their turn. So primarily most of the cards we run kill our opponent's cards on their turn, which is very good because then on your turn you have a lot of relief going into a lot of your own plays. And then we also run Destined Deed Krillin. Now, there are still more cards that I'm going to be adding to the sideboard, but this is for most part like the bulk of it. I'm probably going to have 4 of these in the sideboard. It's a free blocker for the most part as long as you have Android 18. So you can't use it on this side because unfortunately it's only Android 17, but on the Awaken side you can use it. The way you play it is you put in play these bad boys, and if you control a regular Android 18, so if I control any of the 2 drops essentially, since then they don't cost 3 in this deck, I can put it in play for free. It's just great against matchups that want to take your hand away. So it's great against the Cell Chain, and it's also great against the new Gogeta lineup. Your opponent will want to drop your hand size to 3 and shuffle all your cards back in play. Gogeta decks don't have much removal outside of the Gogeta 5-drop, and so put it this way, you free playing guys on the board is going to be great on your end because your hand size will be lower, and it will create your opponent to have to try to play Gogeta, the 5-drop, instead of the 7-drop on you. So you can deviate your opponent from playing what they really want to play on you because you just have an immense board presence that playing the 7-drop wouldn't matter. And as you know, this deck can recover pretty quickly if they can't do much to you. And we can always cell chain our opponent faster than they can use their Gogeta effect. Always remember that. That's one major advantage we have. Whether we go first or second, odds are we're going to be able to cell chain them before they can hit us with that card. But in the event that they can like double objection and go for the Gogeta play, you will just have to, adjust to it, and you play cards like, again, you'll play your Destined Deed Krillins and kind of stall out the game on your favor and get your pieces ready, get some of your androids ready, and of course you want to awaken. So if your opponent tries to keep you at high life, it's not going to work. So the Gogeta combo won't work as well. They're going to want you awaken before they hit you with that. But anyways, guys, that's the deck that I promised you all. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you are test playing with this deck if you want to use it. It does require like good amount of skill in terms of being able to play repetitions against the format. I'm gonna have some gameplay video up soon, so just be a little patient because we have to get a lot of our equipment, mainly the tripods and stuff of that nature, set up. So I will have another video going up very soon, within a couple of days. Just give me a little time and you'll have another treat. But again, thank you for watching, and as always, this Patreon is all about you.